Terrible story from Tyrone, Missouri, where 9 people are found dead in Texas County, Missouri, which is just south of Fort Leonard Wood. 8 victims are dead, and a possible suspect is dead, and they're looking at a number of different crime scenes. So any more information on that, we'll pass that along to you. This morning, we've been dealing, of course, with the Tom Schweich death, and it's very difficult to it's very difficult to, talk about a suicide, because that's what it is. And Kelly Jackson said it best, is that the news media tends not to report on suicides for all sorts of reasons. But since it's an elected official, he was running for governor, it's a story you have to talk about. You have to deal with it. And then, of course, the backstory, it would be sad and tragic in and of itself, just the story that an elected official took his life. But the fact that he was was going to call a news conference earlier in the week, and then decided to call one yesterday, in which he was going to make serious allegations about the head of his own party and a whispering campaign that he claimed was going on to disparage him because he was, quote unquote, Jewish, which he wasn't. But his father was Jewish. His grandfather was Jewish. And so he felt the responsibility to respond to that and to sort of stand up and shout from the rooftops, this is what's going on, and he wasn't going to stand for it. Under that story, he then takes his own life. And so you sort of have to separate what actually happened to what we think happened to what we have no idea what happened. And does one act cause the other? I don't think we know that, and I don't know if it was the ramblings of a man who had some mental issues, or if it was what the man really thought, what the man really believed. I mean, there's a lot of layers here. Now you find yourself with a Republican Party that has been dropped a serious allegation on the party by an elected official, by a gubernatorial candidate, by a legitimate gubernatorial candidate that was raising lots and lots of money. So he clearly had a lot of support. And so you sort of sit here and you sort of ask a bunch of questions. John Diehl, you want to come and join us now? You're early, but we can have you come now and sit and talk and chat with John Diehl. John Diehl, of course, the Speaker of the House, and since he's become Speaker of the House, has somewhat small-timed us. Hasn't, once the man becomes, when he's not Speaker of the House, he's happy to come on the show. Now that he's Speaker of the House, now the man will not return my phone calls. And we know you're very busy running around as the Speaker of the House. So we certainly understand that you have been lax in your duties coming on the show, which is certainly understandable. We'll let you get settled in. You have your coffee, your phone is turned off, and we are ready to roll. First of all, thanks for coming in.
Glad to do it.
Pretty crazy 24 hours. What are your initial thoughts as you sit and watch this story with Tom Schweich?
Well, really, it's just it's a human tragedy. We were on the floor of the Missouri House yesterday working on a bill, and words started filtering around, and as usually with a lot of these tragedies,
right.
First it's, okay, what?
Right.
Political rumors going around, and then just kind of the enormity of the unfolding tragedy starts settling in on people.
Because it happened in waves. It was first he was injured, self-inflicted wound, and then, of course, it was confirmed that he died.
Right, and so you're hearing that, you don't know what's reliable information and what's not, but finally, we decided around 11:30 just that, okay, there was enough going on here. At least he was in the hospital with something serious, so we shut the place down, to try to give everybody time to deal with what was going on. So, it's just I knew Tom fairly well and worked with him a lot. I had the utmost respect for him. He was very, very enthusiastic on his job, and it was just a week ago today, frankly. I was, on a panel with him in Kansas City at the annual Lincoln Days talking about what's going on in state government, kind of like we're doing here today, and taking questions. And, he was very excited about an audit he just did and found the bunch of money that was wasted up in St. Joseph,
Right.
School district up there, and it's just stunning. He's a good man, a good family, and it's a real loss.
Talk about how much interaction did you have with him? You being Speaker of the House, you being Speaker of the House in waiting, him being auditor. Did you work a lot with him? Did you work a little with him?
Well, professionally speaking, not a whole lot. There's
Right.
not a whole lot of interaction, but there would be times he would come up with things in his audits that he would come and say, hey, this bill, this legislation needs to get fixed, or this law needs to get fixed, and
Right.
propose legislation. And there'd be times that would deal with certain accountability issues. We would bring him in to get his thoughts on it. But my interactions with him were mostly in the kind of the political arena, being
Right.
around it,
Yeah.
common events, and also just being a fellow St. Louisan. You'd see him around
Sure, yeah.
at events and stuff like that. He was always very, very gracious, and I thought we had a productive working relationship.
Yeah, we had him on the show. The last time we had him on the show, he was talking about the audits with Ferguson and dealing with some of
Right.
the accounting of the tickets and what's right and what isn't right. And he came on the show numerous times. It's just a sort of sad and tragic. Just in terms of mental health, you just never know when people are struggling with it.
Right, and I don't even want to. I just said this is a little bit. You've had me on this show many times talking about Ferguson. And
Right.
I think the same thing comes here. I just have a very bad taste in my mouth for all speculation at this point.
Right.
Nobody knows what happened.
Right.
They weren't in the room. They don't know what was going on
Right.
with him, and I think we just owe it to the family and owe it to him to give some space and let the family grieve,
Right.
let all the facts process out, and there's plenty of time to speculate or draw conclusions on what happened, but I don't think now is the time to do that.
I will reserve I will not ask you about the whole John Hancock side of this, and I'll wait for all of this to digest. We'll have you back on. We can talk about all that.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah. Let's talk about things going on down in Jefferson City. And first, let's talk about you and I. We were actually scheduled to come on regardless and just have a couple of minutes
Sure,
with you.
absolutely.
So what's going on with this transfer bill now down in Jefferson City?
Yeah, actually, the transfer bill has made really tremendous strides. And in the House, we passed a transfer-related bill this past week, and it passed with record numbers. I think we had something like 115 to 117 votes, which is more than enough to override a governor's veto, and we had bipartisan support on
Right.
that bill. It really what we did was my charge to my committee chairman on this was to try to direct and address the problems that we have. And what we've done was create a system where if a school district is unaccredited, that the students in that school district have real choices on where to get educated. And in that respect, this bill is a giant step forward. What we've done is we've allowed not only intra-district transfers from a failed school building within a failed district, but
Right.
we also provide for allowing students to transfer to charter schools in that county or any county that adjoins that. We've set a tuition rate that both the school districts, both the receiving and the paying school districts can live with and be financially viable.
Right.
And then we've also provided for that the unaccredited district has to pay transportation costs to one selected school district, whereas in the past, students were somewhat on their own if they did that. So this bill is I think if makes it through the Senate and signed by the governor, is going to make some real differences in providing educational options for students in those failed districts.
Sounds to me like the biggest difference between this and the current bill is that if you're in a district in a failed school, you can transfer out of that school into another school within the district that isn't failing, as opposed to
absolutely, or any charter
charter school
in that or an adjoining county. And it also provides options for virtual schooling. So sometimes you may have a student that wants to get out but doesn't have a way to get to a charter school,
Right.
or their family. So it also allows that they could take virtual classes also to get their degree. So we're trying to make use of technology in that regard.
Where the student who was in Normandy, who was in the failed school, wouldn't necessarily go to a Francis Howell school, but would go to another school within that Normandy district that was accredited.
That's accredited, or could go to a KIPP Academy or whatever type of other charter school sits out there also.
One of the issues that Governor Nixon had when he vetoed this the last time was that it had that charter school element in it. Is this?
Well, actually, it was called a private option. So charter schools are actually set up and they're funded through the same system as public schools are. So we kind of massaged that a little bit where we could get some real choices, but still get the votes that we need to pass the bill. I think another really important thing in this bill that ended up being a sticking point was when school districts, particularly the failed school districts, have buildings which sit empty.
Right.
And they are very, very reluctant to sell those to charters because they don't want the competition. Mm-hmm. And so we put something in this bill that would require school districts under certain guidelines and at fair market value to sell vacant school buildings to charter schools. And think what that does too for blight. When you drive, the number one thing if you're in a neighborhood, I think, for a neighborhood going downhill, right in the middle of that neighborhood sits a vacant, boarded up, fenced up school. Mm-hmm. That nothing good comes
with the weeds
of that,
in the top
and the weeds and all that. Just a signal it sends to anybody wanting to buy in that neighborhood or try to revitalize it. So hopefully this also will lead to the disposal of some of these unused and vacant school buildings, some of which have been vacant for 10 plus years, to put them to a productive use.
And so you've got Democratic support in this as well.
Well, we do. We have some of our Black Caucus members in the House who voted for it this time.
And you haven't talked to the governor about this yet.
There have been discussions, and he hasn't committed to signing the bill or not signing the bill. But in fairness, there's not a bill yet.
Right.
There's a version that passed the House. There's a version that passed the Senate. I think we're really close, and I think we'll get it across the finish line.
John Diehl with us, Speaker of the House, with us here for a couple more minutes. Anything else that's brewing that you got going on that's interesting?
Oh, there's quite a bit. Just the events of this week is just it's kind of just stunning. But actually, I think over in the General Assembly we are moving at a really good pace. One of our goals is to get the budget done early.
Right.
As you know, over the past several years, we've had a situation where we pass a budget late in session, and then we spend the whole summer dealing with vetoes, and school districts have money withheld, and colleges have money withheld. So if we're able as a General Assembly to get the budget done about 2 weeks earlier than we typically do, the governor is forced to make the decisions on whether to issue his vetoes during
So you don't have to be called back for a special session.
On budget matters.
Right.
And so we'll be able to provide a lot more certainty to school districts, colleges, mental health providers, all those types of things that have been kind of somewhat held hostage over the past couple of summers. So we're on track to do that. On the House side, we're going to get the budget out 2 weeks earlier than we typically do. Should have that out not this week, but the following week, and over to the Senate.
And then what about the latest with the joint session or the joint committee talking about what's going on with Ferguson?
Right, so that's a very active investigation. Kurt Schaefer out of Columbia is chairing that, and Kathy Conway in St. Charles, who's my House member, is the vice chair of that. That first meeting they had just a few weeks ago was...
It was a doozy.
Yes. and I have to imagine obviously we haven't heard much, haven't been able to follow up on this because of the circumstances of yesterday, but with the Isom, resigning a couple days ago, and what's also interesting too is that I think there's other people on his staff that also quit.
On Dan Isom's
along
staff.
with him.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine that's going to be...
You think he'll be called to the committee?
I would be shocked if Kurt Schaefer didn't talk to him and his staff members.
Do you think that Governor Nixon will be called to this committee?
My understanding is that's what the chairman of the committee is planning to do at some point. Right now he's in the fact-gathering stage, so issuing subpoenas, sunshine law requests,
how long is this going to go? I mean, is this going to be a 6-year investigation?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it won't be like Eric Holder does to the
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I really hope to have it wrapped up, by the middle of April.
Also, while we have you, medical marijuana got a hearing, got a lot of attention. What are your thoughts on that, and does that have any support to sort of make it through to the governor's desk?
That's a little premature to say. What are my thoughts on it? I think it has merit enough where it deserves a hearing. If you think about it, we prescribe a whole lot of different things, which in other forms are illegal. And so I don't know why cannabis in and of itself should be any different. If there's a legitimate medical purpose prescribed by a real doctor under real controlled circumstances, I think it deserves a hearing, and I think it deserves to be considered. I think it still has a very long way to go, and the matter is very complicated. I don't see under any circumstances where we do a California or Colorado style medical use.
Yes.
But much like we do with CBD oil and children with epileptic disorders last session, that comes from the same chemical compound ultimately.
THC stuff, right.
So we were able to do that because there was a legitimate reason and a legitimate way to control to make sure it got for the legitimate medical reason. Yeah. And if there's something like that that's a little broader, I think we're willing to consider that.
How's your first couple months of the speakership going?
Yeah, I like it. It's kind of fun. It's not bad. So, it's one of the things you have to learn is that you can't control everything. You have to just kind of clearly enunciate principles to your caucus, and I've found that just being focused more on getting things done rather than going out and being more active politically has been very effective.
Well, you've said that this is it for you, right? Once you're done with this term, you're done.
I'm not running for anything in 2016. There's about eight people around the building that are, and that creates complications. So I'm just focusing on doing this job and doing this job well.
Would you ever see yourself putting your name on a ballot for something in the future?
Oh gosh, in the future, it's not in my plans.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There is Speaker of the House John Diehl. Get back to work. Thanks for checking in.
Appreciate it. Anytime.
Yeah, not
anytime.
Not anytime.
Anytime that fits in my schedule and maybe your schedule. But
anytime. We'll see
people call my people.
We'll see you in December, maybe. All right, there you go. John Diehl here, Speaker of the House. Nice enough to spend a couple minutes with us.